Thanks for staying with us on DD India, watching live from New Delhi. Special broadcast on India's Union Budget 2025 on DD India, your channel and India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhatt and with me is my colleague Shubhendu Ghosh.
Thank you, Sakal. Yes, our continuous and comprehensive coverage of the Union Budget 2025 continues. The latest update that came in, Sakal, is that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has reached the Parliament premises. That's the focus of the day. She's going to have a brief meeting with her cabinet colleagues before the presentation of the Union Budget at 11 a.m. We'll get you all the updates as they roll in. 11 a.m. the budget presentation starts. But for now, let's roll the top stories at this hour.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman to present her 8th consecutive Union Budget today in India's Parliament. Minister Sitharaman calls on President Draupadi Murmu.
Budget 2025 expectations soar up from tax relief to capex boost. All eyes on Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's budget announcements.
Economic survey pegs India's GDP growth at 6.3 to 6.8% for next fiscal year. Domestic growth levers in focus.
And India is all set to unveil its financial roadmap for the upcoming fiscal, with Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman scheduled to present the Union Budget 2025-26.
That's right, Shubhendu. In fact, Minister Sitharaman will be presenting Budget 25-26 in the lower house of the Parliament at 11 a.m. local time today, which means around 5:30 a.m. GMT. And right now, Minister Sitharaman is already in the Parliament premises for a meeting of Union Cabinet, which is customary prior to the budget. And this cabinet meeting, Union Cabinet meeting, is going to be chaired by Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, which will actually approve the budget.
And earlier today, Minister Sitharaman was at her office, the Finance Ministry in the North Block. These visuals, of course, of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman at Rashtrapati Bhavan, calling on President Draupadi Murmu. She had a brief yet important meeting with her colleagues, with President Draupadi Murmu. Also witnessed a very special moment of dahi chini that President Draupadi Murmu offered to Finance Minister ahead of the big Union Budget, big important development, as is the Indian tradition, ahead of important auspicious developments. Right. Dahi chini is offered, and those very special moments of warmth between President Draupadi Murmu and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman.
President of India Draupadi Murmu on your screens earlier today in the morning offering curd with sugar. It's customary, it's Indian tradition, an auspicious way to start something very, very important and auspicious. And this, of course, to augur very well for the nation. Minister Sitharaman happily took the offering as a sign that her important budget will be landmark in many ways. This will be Minister Sitharaman's 8th budget presentation under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, marking Shubhendu yet another significant milestone.
And remember the important points and milestones that we have to remember. This is the first full budget of Modi government 3.0, and those visuals that we are playing for you again and again, the special moment shared between President Draupadi Murmu and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Curd, sugar, dahi chini being offered by President to Finance Minister ahead of the auspicious occasion, as is the Indian tradition. The presentation of the Union Budget takes place in less than an hour now at
rooted
the Parliament.
Deeply in our India's culture and tradition. Let's talk about the budget document and the copy. They have been taken inside the Parliament. The Bahi Khata, this time being digital also. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, as we earlier mentioned, will be presenting the budget today at 11 a.m. local time. As per the studio clock is 11 to 10. And the final countdown in a way has already kick-started.
Absolutely. And Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, who has so far presented a total of 7 straight consecutive budgets under the Modi government, including an interim one, remember, in February 2024, last year, is set to table her 8th consecutive budget today. In 2020, Minister Nirmala Sitharaman created a unique record for delivering the longest budget speech as the Union Finance Minister in the Parliament. And on Saturday, today, the Minister will create history for presenting the 8th consecutive Union budget. My colleague Tripti Tripathi brings us more.
Nirmala Sitharaman is set to make history. She will become the first women finance minister to present 8 consecutive union budgets, each shaping India's economic landscape. From the traditional briefcase to the iconic Vahi Khata and now a paperless budget using a Made in India tablet, budget presentations have evolved significantly under her tenure. In 2019, she introduced the Vahi Khata, a symbol of India's heritage. By 2021, she led the digital revolution with a fully paperless budget aligning with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision of Digital India. Over the years, the union budget has consistently focused on women-led development, ensuring increased funding for women's empowerment and welfare. In the year 2024, 3.3 lakh crore rupees were allocated for women's welfare, boosting Mudra loan limits from 10 lakh to 20 lakh rupees for women entrepreneurs. In the year 2023, a 267 crore rupees increase for the Women and Child Development Ministry was seen, prioritizing Saksham Anganwadi and Poshan 2.0. In the year 2021, a revamp of welfare schemes with Mission Shakti, Mission Vatsalya and Poshan 2.0 was seen. In the year 2021, the highest ever allocation for Saksham Anganwadi and Mission Poshan 2.0 was witnessed. In the year 2020, a strong push for education and nutrition with 3,700 crore rupees was allocated for the National Nutrition Mission and 35,600 crore rupees for nutrition-related programs. Each budget under Nirmala Sitharaman has carried a distinct vision. Let's take a quick recap. In the year 2024, a focus on employment, skilling, MSMEs and the middle class with 9 key priorities shaping economic policies was seen. In the year 2023, the Amrit Kal budget targeting youth, job creation and economic growth with a 45 trillion rupees spending plan and tax relief for the individuals was witnessed. In the year 2022, a push for green energy and digital economy, including the launch of India's digital rupee and the 30% tax on cryptocurrency income was witnessed. In the year 2021, a post-pandemic recovery plan with major investments in healthcare and infrastructure was seen. In 2020, a pandemic-hit economy saw a budget focusing on healthcare, agriculture and economic revival. With expectations running high, all eyes are now on Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's upcoming budget. What new policies will shape India's economic future? Tripti Tripathi's report for DD India.
As we've mentioned, that this is going to be a historic budget in the sense that she not only will be the first woman finance minister, but also as a finance minister,
That's right.
8th consecutive budget presentation. And as India's finance minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, of course, is set to present the union budget shortly, around roughly 45 minutes. Indian artist Zuhaib Khan has created this 8-feet portrait of Minister Sitharaman, and this picture is created with coal and chalk, and artist hopes through that picture that our Indian rupee will rise in a strong position, and so will nation progress more strongly and in more robust manner.
Clever way, Sakal, of inserting budget expectations
Absolutely.
in one's artwork as well. But interesting artwork there of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. And from fiscal policy to tax surcharge, the budget jargon can be quite tricky. Our next report breaks down the budget terms for you as they are presented later in the day.
To understand the importance of the budget, it is imperative to know its key terms. First and foremost is the budget estimate, which is the projection of the expenditure and earnings of the government in a financial year. Expenditure includes allocation of funds to various ministries, payment of salaries, and spending on infrastructure. It's also important to take note of the fiscal deficit, which is the difference between the government's revenue, excluding borrowings, and expenditure. The goal is to reduce the fiscal deficit to avoid higher national debt. Borrowings are the funds raised by the government to bridge the fiscal deficit. This includes the amount the government borrows from the bond market. As the name suggests, non-tax revenue is the income generated by the government from non-tax sources. This includes fines and interests that are received by the central government through the loans provided by it to the state governments. Fiscal policy deals with the taxation and spending decisions of the government. It is used to manage the domestic economy. Coming to taxes, they are classified into direct and indirect taxes. Direct tax includes income tax, which is charged on the earning of an individual or a business. A tax surcharge is an additional tax levied on high earning individuals. Sin tax is levied on products like cigarettes and alcohol that are bad for health. Indirect tax is levied on goods and services. It includes the goods and services tax. Rolled out in 2017, GST replaced various indirect taxes in India. Long-term capital gains tax is levied on profits earned from sale of assets like stocks, mutual funds, and residential plots held for the long term. Apart from taxes, the government also raises funds through disinvestment, which is the sale of stakes in public sector undertakings. Finally, there's the finance bill, which details tax-related proposals in the budget. Knowing the implications of the budget helps in making personal finance decisions as well as understanding the government's economic policies. Bureau Report, DD India.
And benchmark equity index is also, Sakala, showing excitement.
Yes, right, Shubhedu. In fact, benchmark equity indices, that's the BSE, Sensex and Nifty, opened with some good gains. That's a positive sign out there ahead of the presentation of Budget 2025. So let's take a look at what happens at the opening bell. The BSE Sensex was higher by 108.27 points or 0.14% at 77,608.84, and Nifty was at 23,545.75, which is ahead by 37.35 points or by 0.16%. And after the opening bell on the 30-stock BSE Sensex, half the stocks were trading with gains while the rest declined. On the Nifty 50 rather, 28 stocks were trading lower while the rest climbed. Across sectors, the Nifty IT index was top drag behind 0.23%. The Nifty Bank, Financial Services, Private Bank, Public Sector Unit Banks, so PSU Bank and oil and gas indices were in trading lower.
The news that just is coming in, Union Cabinet is meeting in the Parliament premises, as is the tradition. Ahead of the budget presentation, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman with her team reached the Parliament House just a short while ago. India's budget 2025 is set to be presented, and the news just coming in, the Union Cabinet is of which the Finance Minister is part of, is meeting in the Parliament premises. Just a brief discussion ahead of the presentation of the Union budget by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman.
Absolutely. And this Union Cabinet meet is chaired by Honorable Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi, who will approve the budget.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also reached the Parliament, is heading the Cabinet meeting that is taking place as we speak.
Final approval to the budget by the Union Cabinet, headed by Prime Minister of India, a historic budget, as we just mentioned, Minister Sitharaman's 8th consecutive budget with lots of middle-class hopes and aspirations and overall sectoral expectations attached to it when the country is headed towards the not only Atmanirbhar Bharat mission but also Viksit Bharat Mission 2047. Well, is that going to be the central idea? We're going to talk about all that with our experts, but right now the big news coming in from the Parliament of India that Finance Minister of India Nirmala Sitharaman is meeting the Union Cabinet of the country headed by the Prime Minister to seek the final approval of the budget, after which there's going to be a formal budget presentation at 11 a.m. local time in Indian Parliament. That is what we're going to be broadcasting live on your national news broadcaster, DD News and DD India. Right.
And the update coming in that Union Finance Minister, along with her colleagues of the Cabinet, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is heading this Cabinet meeting taking place in the Parliament premises, as is the tradition, an official nod ahead of the presentation of the Union Budget by Finance Minister in Lok Sabha. And joining us are special guests who would take forward this conversation on the Union Budget. We're still talking about expectations. We'll talk about the budget as it is presented. Let me once again welcome Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, Vice Chancellor IIFT, who's with us in the studio. Welcome, sir. Also joining us is Richa Gupta, who's an eminent economist. Richa, if I can come to you first. Many see this budget also as something that articulates India's aspirations for becoming the third largest economy in the world. And we know geopolitics is going through a very challenging time. What are your thoughts on the areas where the budget could focus on?
This vision that we have of becoming Viksit Bharat has been a continuing dream that we have, and we've seen the previous budgets also address parts of this. So we expect that the budget would continue focusing on infrastructure, digital, physical, socio-economic infrastructure. They would continue the emphasis on trying to ensure that we take the benefit of our demographic dividend before time runs out. So focus on skilling, upskilling, primary education, all aspects of education, the whole value chain. So we are expecting the budget to continue the focus on that. Apart from this, the other pressing problem is, managing the supply side to control inflation and to see how we can boost exports. So, not just boost high value exports, but also expand the markets in which our exports, are targeted towards. So to manage the global volatile economy and geopolitics, the budget will continue to focus on reviving domestic or continuing sustaining domestic consumption, domestic investment, and strengthening exports. So I think these will be the themes that will continue. We think will continue to be seen in the budget as we have seen in the prior budgets.
And as much as Professor Rakesh Mohan, this budget aligns with the government's digital initiatives, but from the Aam Aadmi's perspective, but just to decode it further, the first thing that we all, the salaried class, want to know that what happens to my tax slab, and the increase in the tax bracket, we're looking at rationalization of GST and all of that. That middle class aspiration pertaining to the tax slabs and some sort of a relief there. This has been a talking point. I think we discuss this every year. But this time, do you think there's going to be more than a good news in that sector?
I think salary class and the middle class is waiting for it for years now. And,
That's precisely why I asked you this question.
And, each of us are a part of that. Now, this middle class, There
was, by the way, mention of middle class aspirations.
No, I think, Sakal, you are very right.
Yeah.
You are very right.
It sets the tone.
Because, it sets the tone. Because this middle class is one who pays the tax. Probably is, this is the class, who is responsible for consumption as well. But I think this is not the class on which I think the is very important, especially the politically, and therefore the freebies go to the other class, wherein, and therefore, if you look into two things. Number one is, some relaxation in the tax, and more than that has to be, the tax rationalization.
Yes.
The complexity of the procedures is still, I think there are opportunities that which can be, rationalized and made more simplified. And I think, to going on a level maybe up to 10 lakhs, ideally there may not be a tax, and, you pay the tax, you file the return, the cumbersome, and then you take the, refund and all that. So I think there is a lot of opportunity which I am, not very sure how government is going to deal with it. But I think middle class, needs a lot of relaxation.
Other concern, other broader concern of the middle class has been, and this time since a lot of economists and experts like you were speaking about the fact that, the government is going to give more money in our hands, in the middle class hands.
No, very right. Because
but then, my question, sir, but then I also have to deal with the rising inflationary issues. We may not like it, but it's there, especially food inflation. So how do we balance that? How do we counter
No, you are very right. Because, the inflation, especially the food inflation, and therefore, the salary is not going out, job is another problem. and if the spending in the middle class does not come, the growth of the entire economy is challenged. And therefore, not only to give a relief to middle class, it makes sense for the government to give more money to this class, because this is wherein you make this economy a vibrant one. And so this is one, to make vibrant one. And then another thing, because this class has got no safety net. So I think there are a lot of structural reforms which can be done, and I'm expecting at least some of them in the budget today.
Union Cabinet is all right. Union Cabinet has already approved the budget proposal. Cabinet chaired by the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, giving the final nod to the 8th consecutive budget presentation by Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Cabinet clearing all decks for the budget 2025 presentation.
That's the update coming in from the Parliament. The Union Cabinet is the last stage before the actual presentation of the Union budget. The Union Cabinet, in that brief meeting that took place in the Parliament premises, has cleared the presentation of the budget 2025. Now, Finance Minister will present the Union budget for 2025-26 financial year. This would happen at the lower house, which is called the Lok Sabha of Parliament, where the presentation of the Union budget will take place. Eminent guests continue to be with us. Richa Gupta, ma'am, if I can come to you. Before we get to know what the Union budget contains, if we just for a moment look at the economic survey that sort of gives a bird's eye view of India's economy, it talks about ease of doing business, which has been the priority of the government, deregulating businesses, making the cost of doing business lower. Could you put that in perspective as to what is the expectation for entrepreneurs from the budget?
Even today in India, as the economic survey rightly pointed out, government still needs to get out of, as they put it, way of doing business. So, and the economic survey has done a very good analysis to show that states that have deregulated better have also grown better. So the deregulation, or the expectation that, the number of regulations that, any business, small or medium, has to face has to come down, and it has to be at two levels. One is at a central level, but more importantly, it has to be at the state level. So the states also need to focus on their ease of doing business in their respective states. So the ask from private investment is that it should be made easier for them to invest and grow within the country. There has been progress made, but that progress needs to be deepened, widened and faster. The progress has to be faster on that front, as what the economic survey is also emphasizing.
Rakeshji, also, do you think there's going to be also some sort of focus on weeding out policy paralysis, since we are talking about ease of doing business and especially a big boost to the manufacturing?
You are extremely right, because in this the economic survey has not minced words in telling that government should be out of business, government should allow business to operate. It is not that what incentives you do. What business requires is then you let them do the business. If you look into, doing business in India and doing business in America and China, which is much more easier, despite of all the reforms which I have done, which I think we are doing very competitively, I have no doubt about it, but I think we have a long way to go, wherein business feel themselves that there is the government control is less, and government is working on that the way it happens in China. But there is a lot of procedural bottlenecks even today for MSMEs, for exporters, for traders, for manufacturers, for tax collection, and for information sharing, wherein the business people even feel. You can see that over the last about a decade or so, almost 55,000 of the HNIs have fled abroad. Even if you see fled abroad means 3 lakh crore of investment which could have come to India has gone abroad. So one thing is attracting the FDI in India, at the same time motivating Indian business people to spend in India and not to flight of capital. The same thing is we need to do. You are very right to say education sector. If you see 2-3 lakh students going abroad every year, and with their going abroad, 80% of them go with a intention to settle abroad. So I think those structural reforms are required, but budget is not the only one. But budget is a part of one, budget is a critical part of one, and therefore something which I think budget can do in tax collection and all that. The rationalization.
Since you talked about education, Shubhendu, we were talking to reporters from Mumbai and other elsewhere across the country. We're getting those reports, expectations. There also this talk about access to skilling for economically disadvantaged students, where this is the time when we're looking at interest-free loans. You think there's going to be some movement in that?
I think so, because skilling education is extremely important to capitalize upon the demographic dividend which India has got. And unless the measures are taken, this demographic dividend could be India's disaster. And I am very sure the government knows this. And I am very sure that in one form or the other form, there will be focus on the education, skill development, and facilitating.
Let's for a moment shift gears to industry and industry expectations. Shubhendu?
Absolutely. And we have my colleague Shama Mishra, who's reporting from Mumbai, the financial capital. Shama, I believe that you also have an important guest with you. Over to you. Tell us how you're tracking the developments from Mumbai. Stock markets, for one, have opened to a sort of positive outlook.
Shama?
Positive note, and that definitely shows that it is expecting a lot from Finance Minister's 8th budget. You've mentioned that I have a guest with me. I have Swati Salgaonkar with us. She is the CII Western Region Chairperson. So obviously she has to speak on a host of issues. Let's start with the basic question. What are you expecting? And since you're a woman, I'm a woman, women-led development is something Prime Minister has always spoken about. So what do you expect in terms of women's share in this budget?
Thank you. So I think, we're all very optimistic for this year's budget. I understand the government has had quite a task, given all the geopolitical tensions, even the stress on the economy. I think so they have, a lot to work on. But I think, in terms of women-led development, if you look at our female participation of the workforce, it is not in keeping with global standards. So this is really something that I think we need to work on. And I'm hopeful that, this budget will address that. Even the last interim budget in July, had a lot of incentives. So I think if we look at infrastructure for women, digital empowerment of women, I think these will go a long way.
Okay. So, Sakal, you had asked me this question earlier that, in terms of women expectations. Correct. So, I think this answer would be, this is an answer for that question. But also overall, you are an industry person. What are the kind of suggestions that the experts or industrialists from different sectors have given to you to give it to the ministry?
So I think one, overarching theme is on technology. I think we've all seen, in the last, week or so, the disruption that AI is bringing. And I think the one way to address that would really be to increase our R&D spending. Because I think India really needs to develop indigenous technology. But at the same time, we need to balance that with employment and, jobs, because we have a very large young population, and we can't say that at the cost of at the cost of jobs we'll promote AI. So I think there needs to also be a very large focus on skilling, especially in frontier technology.
So you mentioned about skilling. Skilling and upskilling is also something which is a demand from across sectors. And when we are talking about this, how to address this actually, and even apart from the budget, what should be the course of action?
So actually, CII has been doing a lot of work in skilling. It's one of our key agendas, across sectors and various levels as well. So I think really the way for skilling ahead is for public-private partnerships, because ultimately, I think industry, needs to kind of skill workers the way they want them to be ready for the jobs.
Okay. So those were basically, addressing these questions where the expectations of the industry, expectations of women have already been told. And in terms of skilling and upskilling, definitely there's a need for R&D, more innovation, and, yes, it's the PPP, the private sector also has to come together with the backing of the government.
Just that quick point, very quickly, there is also this talk about more access to credit, enhancing access to credit from when we talk about rural women entrepreneurs, Shama, and self-employed individuals. Are the CII ecosystem also pushing for these demands to be met, like Mudra scheme? We've been emphasizing a lot on those policy initiatives.
Your audio is very low, Sakal. Could you repeat that?
All right, we will come to you in a bit.
If I'm audible to you, Sharma, then she was asking about credit availability for women entrepreneurs. How much is being done for that, if you could tell us?
Okay, so women-led development, you've been working for that area as well. What about the credit take for the women who are working in the rural areas, for women entrepreneurs in the rural areas?
So I think that's very important because, once you kind of make funds more accessible, and this is what I was talking about earlier also in terms of, digital access, because if you see now, women have a whole host of opportunities which, earlier weren't available to them. And I think in terms of skilling as well, like, if you share basic, business skills with them, I think this will go a long way.
Okay. So yeah, definitely that is the self-help groups that we are talking about, and making the digital access available to them, also teaching them new ways of dealing, new ways of doing business will obviously go a long way.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Sharma, for getting us those updates from Mumbai. We'll keep coming back to you, of course. Let's turn to the national capital, Delhi. Our colleague Dibendu is at the Parliament premises, where the cabinet meeting just concluded, giving a nod to the union budget. Dibendu, what is the latest that you can share with us? Still just under 30 minutes to go for the union budget presentation. What is happening at the moment?
Well, Shubhendu, the cabinet briefing just concluded, and the cabinet has given its nod to the union budget for 25-26. All the cabinet ministers were present during this crucial cabinet meeting, which is customary before every budget is presented. So, of course, all the ministers have now started moving inside the Lok Sabha. All the parliamentarians have started arriving in the parliament. And just less than 30 minutes from now, we'll see the Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman walking into the Lok Sabha, and she will be presenting her 8th consecutive budget this time. And this is also, of course, the Women Finance Minister who will be presenting the budget for the 8th consecutive times. Of course, two important feats being achieved by the Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman here. And of course, as you can see behind me, all the parliamentarians are slowly reaching Parliament. It's less than 30 minutes from now. The cabinet meeting is over. The budget has been given the official nod by the Union Cabinet. And of course, the budget will be tabled in the Parliament in a short while from now. Shubhendu.
Okay, thank you very much, Dibendu, but do stay standby. We'll come to you in a bit. And I'd also take this opportunity to very quickly welcome two very special women panelists, since we are talking about women-led development, and that also is going to be central to the budget this year. Ms. Jyoti Wij, DG FICCI, joining us on this special broadcast. And let me quickly also welcome Nainalal Kidwai ma'am, former CEO and country head of HSBC. Thank you so much. Thank you. Nana ma'am, I would like to come to you. Over to you, your take, especially on the women-led development and tax slabs over there, because even in yesterday's address of the Honourable President to the joint sitting of the Parliament, there were multiple mentions of how women are central to the development of the country. But in budget, how do you see that vision being translated into?
The whole issue of women-led development is about provision of jobs. And if you look at the thrust of the economic survey in terms of deregulation and the state and the way it interacts with business, we still have rules across our country which forbid women being employed after hours. And the issue that therefore needs to be tackled is, why is that rule there? And it's there because of the pathetic law and order and security issues in and around the areas in which women work. So that is the kind of infrastructure investment that needs to happen so that these regulations can and must change. And many employers have actually pleaded with state governments that they will take the responsibility, and they do. So the rules and regulations that even permit women to work, let alone the incentive to work, needs to be sorted out. We obviously still have what looks like discrimination in the way women are dealt with in terms of access to finance for business. So, the focus on that, both from the government and the push to the banks and to the whole venture capital sector as well, needs to continue. The third area which I'm a little concerned about, and I know you just touched on that in terms of microfinance,
Yes, ma'am.
there is stress in the microfinance sector. And the biggest beneficiaries of microfinance have been through self-help groups, women. That stress is going to come back to bite if it isn't sorted out quickly, because we are seeing that there are multiple loans in the microfinance sector. So overborrowing. Women are borrowing to repay loans, which is never ideal, which means we need to give more focus on livelihood and employment at a level that they can repay loans by earning money, not by taking another loan. And there is report, and that worries me because I've always been a great fan of the microfinance sector from early days, is the breakdown of this community support and lending, which the self-help group was about, that they stood by each other, helping each other when it comes to repayment of loans. So now the trend, I understand, can be that the person just vanishes. So this concern on financialization, which has been raised in the economic survey, whether rural or urban, needs to be really looked at very seriously, which is overborrowing. And we've seen the 18.3% was what the personal loan and bank credit was about, up to almost a third of total bank credit now is in the personal category. So the quality of that lending is a cause of concern right now.
Significant points there. Ms. Jyoti Vij, Director General, FICCI, also is joining us now. Ma'am, if I can come to you, your thoughts on what will it take to make women-led development in a large scale a reality in the country? And also, I just want to bring your attention to a point that the economic survey mentioned yesterday about the need for flexibility in working condition that we still do not see in India across sectors, and for women in particular. How much of a differentiator could that be?
So I think Ms. Kidwai has raised some very, very valuable points, and she and I have been discussing some of these for many, many years, especially the livelihood aspect, because it's not just about providing money in their hands, but also the ability to be able to pay back. But, we've also been part of the G20 platform last year, and many other global platforms like the BRICS, etc. So it's not an issue just that India alone faces, but one very aspect which resonates across is, I think, the care ecosystem. And you talked about flexibility, etc., because women are the caregivers, across, whether it is at the time of the childbirth or the old age care required at home at a certain stage. So I think the care ecosystem, a robust care ecosystem, is something which is going to be very, very critical. And I think it's the centerpiece for getting, enabling the women to be able to, come back into the jobs or be able to remain stable in the jobs. So that's very important. There are you won't probably be aware that there is a perquisite tax when women are given some care allowances by the companies. So this if you are spending some money on the care and it's being reimbursed, or you'll be given some quantum of some by the company, that gets taken away in the form of tax. Plus there is also GST. At 80% on the daycare centers.
Yes. Jyoti ma'am, I'll have to interrupt here because we are really running short of time, because the final countdown for the budget presentation from Parliament. I'll take this opportunity to help Jyoti Vij, DG FICCI, and Nirmala Kidwai, former FICCI President and CEO, Country Head, HSBC. Thank you. And we are going to take a very short break here. We'll be back on the special Budget 2025 presentation. Don't go away.